Comic books is our number one, of course. Comics, trades, old comics, but number two is Magic the Gathering, and that's been pretty much consistent since 1993.
The owner of the store, Keegan, he goes to a lot of different comic book conventions around the country. I have gone to some of those as well to help him out.
We do New Orleans, we do Chicago, we do Orlando, Baltimore, of course, because it's local, but we go to the shows maybe 8 to 10 times a year. What we do is we take our old stuff, so a lot of like these graded books and all this stuff, that goes with me to the shows. So if you come in and I'm on a show, you're gonna see signs up here that says, at a show, we'll be back later. So we take the old stuff to the shows because that's where a lot of comic collectors come to buy old books, because you're gonna have 50 dealers there selling old stuff, so they have plenty to choose from. Most of the time, the value of the book comes from just a couple different factors. Rarity, but the main one is there a first appearance in it? Or, you know, like at the first appearance of Spider-Man is always gonna be worth something. But even in the first appearance of a more minor character, you know, like one of the Guardians of the Galaxy, that will affect the value. Sometimes just the cover of the book will affect the value. If I had it here, I'd show it to you, but there's a Hulk 340 cover, which is a classic Wolverine, and his claws are out, and in the claws, you can see the image of the Hulk. So people literally just buy that book for the cover. I have a Batman 1, did not bring that with me though, because that's a lot of money. I've sold stuff like Captain America 1. I sold a first appearance of Robin just 2 months ago. That book's extremely rare, maybe 100, 125 copies exist. First dealer that came up and was like, how much do you want for the book? I told him, he's like, I'll take it. Right. It's a rare book. I mean, every movie helps. So every movie just keeps comic books out there. But certain movies, you tend to get a big jump. Like when the Watchmen movie was coming a few years back, we sold tons of Watchmen trades. Tons of Watchmen trades. And of course, with the Avengers movie that just came out, we sold a lot of the Infinity Gauntlet, which the movie was based on.
We do see a lot of our people who come in and they'll say, oh, I've never been into a comic book shop before, but I just saw this movie and wanted to check it out. Or we have people who are kind of like dragged here by their friends, and once they see what we have, they're like, oh, it's so-and-so from that movie I just saw. Oh my God, yeah, it's a comic, isn't it? And then they start to get a little interested in it.
So sometimes there is a correlation, sometimes there's not. It works that way if specifically there's a book that it's based on. Because then people will come in, hey, I like the Avengers. Well, you know the movie's based on this book. That makes it easier. So the Infinity Gauntlet was always a good story. So it always had value to it. But once it came out that the movie was going to be based on it, then everybody started to want to collect it. So then you get a spike in the price. Of course, after the movie goes away, then it settles down a little bit, but it always ends up being higher than it used to be, because now it's definitely in the conscience of everyone who wants to collect books. All right, first off, we've got Batman 121, which is the first appearance of Mr. Freeze. And you probably know him from the Batman movies. This book is one of the rarer DC books from the time period. It's graded 4.5 and graded by the CGC company. They're the #1 grading company in the world. Price this one at $2,200, which is about the market value on the book. It's just hard to get. The other type of book that we tend to sell a lot at shows is the signature series. These yellow labels mean that the signature on the book was witnessed by an authorized CGC facilitator and witness. And you'll notice there's an extra Spider-Man head right here. That is an original sketch done by Mike Zeck. So the signature with the original sketch, and of course it got a 9.8 grade, which is pretty much considered perfect in grading world, means the book is worth $575. If this book had only gotten a 9.6, then it might only be worth $350. So that 0.2, there's a big jump. But what really adds a lot is the signature and the sketch. Because a book like this in a blue label that doesn't have the head sketch or the signatures, because there's 2 signatures on here, sells for about $225. So the value increases from the fact that the artist actually drew on it and signed the book. This is the first appearance of Spider-Man's black costume, which later turned out to be Venom down the road. So people always like this book, they want to collect this book. So when you're looking for good collectible books, you want to go with something that's graded, and you also want to go with key first appearances, like first Mr. Freeze, first black costume, and this one's signed.
I was reading comics on and off for a little while there when the New 52 line of comics from DC first appeared on the scene. I picked up Aquaman and absolutely loved it. He's my favorite superhero. And on the Marvel side of things, I really love Moon Knight. So when the Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey series first started for Moon Knight, I picked that up and it was like an instant classic for me. So now I just kind of try to find things that I like. What got me really started into reading comics regularly was the Annihilation comic series from Marvel that came out a while ago. It really is kind of hit and miss for me. It really just depends on the storyline and the characters.
I was a UPS driver, had been doing UPS for about 10 years. And I used to get my books at Heroes World in the Columbia Mall. And I went in there after working one day, and the guy's like, "We lost our lease. We're closing in 2-3 weeks." It's like, crap, where am I getting my comic books from? So I was driving home and I was like, I think I'm gonna open a comic store. 6 weeks later, opened the store in this exact same spot. I do not recommend it as a way to open a comic store. 30 years later, or almost 30 years later, we're still here.
It's really nice because we got a lot of people who come in regularly to pick up their comic books. Every Wednesday, new comic books are released, and so it's nice to have a steady group of regulars who come in, familiar faces, and I can ask them, "Hey, how have you been? How are the kids?" That sort of thing. And then we have a regular group of players who come in for Magic and stuff. So it's nice to see a lot of people really enjoying the space, not just coming in and buying stuff and leaving,
Oh, all the time. People like to come in, and I tell all my employees, half your job is just talking to people. People come in, they want to talk about the Joker movie they just saw, or the Avengers movie, or the Shazam movie coming up. They want to get your opinion and just talk. That's what they want to do.
We even have some comic book artists who will come in sometimes.
We've had artists in over the years. Like we had Dave Cockerman. He's one of the creators of the X-Men. He's passed a long time ago, but we had him in here in like really early in the 90s, like 1993, 94. One of our guys who's been coming here since he was real little and worked here for a couple years, his name's Chris Vance. He just got his first job doing a cover for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, he was coming here since he's real little. Now he's become somebody. And then, you ever heard of the cartoon The Boondocks? Aaron McGruder used to come here when he was real little. He used to come here all the time. And then he ended up obviously making it pretty big. Those are the two that have been in the store that have kind of succeeded. Okay, so if you came in and said, "Hey, I'm interested in comics," my first question would be, do you like superheroes, or do you want something more adult? Would you like the Marvel movies, the DC movies? Just try and narrow it down. Like, everyone needs to read The Dark Knight Returns, The Killing Joke, Watchmen. And once they read a trade or two, and they tell you whether they liked it, then you know where to steer them towards other stuff.
Well, it really depends on the character. I know that there are some different story arcs that are really great for people to jump into if they've never read anything with a particular character. So if let's say they saw a recent like Avengers comic, I know of a few different Avengers titles that are really great for beginners. It's just a matter of finding a spot to jump in that isn't too intimidating. That's a nice sort of landing point for someone to just start. So it's actually pretty easy to just kind of come in, see what's available, and just start reading.
If you're going to Books A Million or Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any of those places, you're literally just going to walk in and stare at the wall and just grab something. If you come in here, we can tell you whether the story's good. We can tell you other stories that you like good. We can get whatever you want to get, we can get for you.
What we can provide for people is, again, that community, that environment where they come in, they see a familiar face, and they know, like, "Hey, I know that you like these certain characters, and I'm going to put this stuff in your subscription box that I know you'll like."
But we can put the personal touch on it versus Amazon, where you're just going to hit a button. They can't tell you that, "No, you don't want to buy that, dude, that story sucks." Or versus, "You should read this one instead of that one." Or if you liked this trade, you'll like that trade.
I'm going to ask you about your day, how things are going. You can make friends here if you keep coming to these regular events. It's just a nice environment for people to feel like they can come here and talk about things they're interested in. We can talk about like the latest movies that have come out together and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of nice to come in and have that. You can't really get that with a computer screen,
So that's the difference between us and the internet, I guess.
I think it's really great that comics are becoming more and more for everyone. Comic publishers, they're really trying to broaden their horizons, reaching out to people. They've released a bunch of really interesting like comics for younger readers, like preteens and stuff. So there's comics for kids, there's comics for mature readers, there's all sorts of stuff for people to get into. I mean, my mom is reading comics now, which is really amazing. So I think it's a really great time for comic books.